thanks everybody for joining us. I'm Doug Melnick. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer, and really excited that we're finally here together, albeit virtually, to sort of kick things off. It's been a long process, and I very much want to thank you for your commitment to this. But before we get started, we have a special guest. We have Councilwoman Anna Sandoval from District 7, who's been a really sort of one of the biggest champions, if not the biggest champion, on council in these this climate work. And she's worked, just so you guys know, her and Councilwoman Andrew Sullivan spent a lot of time this past year bringing us to this moment. So, Councilwoman, I'd love to sort of turn it over to you to kick this off.
Thank you, Doug. I want to say hi and welcome to everyone who's with us. Thank you for giving of your time to do this and for putting your name forward when we were looking for applicants. Each and every one of you was especially picked for this. This was a very thorough process that we did. So not to put any pressure on you, but we do have great expectations of each of you. We know that you have a lot to bring to the table. We're doing a lot of new things with this particular group, or these two groups, and you're going to be the leaders in doing this. This is the first time we go through a thorough equity training that we're going to do. We'll also learn a little bit more about climate change so that we're all on the same page as we move forward. But I'm just very happy that we're here and ready to go. Thank you, Doug.
Doug, you're on mute.
I don't know about you guys, who else is tired of WebEx and Zoom, but I am. So before we get started, I just want to introduce the team that's going to be presenting and facilitating today. Again, I'm Doug Melnick, Chief Sustainability Officer. We're joined here with Julia Murphy, Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer, Mina Defee, who's our Climate Program Manager and who's been really sort of the genius behind the scenes, all this, but you'll get to meet her in a little bit. And then we have two facilitators who are joining us today. We've got Nick Burgett from the Y Group, and he'll be the lead facilitator on the technical and working group. And we have Lupita Gonzalez with Thrive Advisory, who's an equity specialist and expert. And so she'll be the lead facilitator for the equity group. But there'll be a lot of tag teaming, not just today, but through all the meetings going forward, just to make sure that there's cross collaboration between these two committees. If we go to the next slide. Great, thank you, Mina. So here's the agenda for this evening's orientation meeting. I also wanted to mention briefly that as we were discussing, it's a public meeting. It's being recorded and broadcast. And so just so you know that people are watching. But the goal, of this meeting was to bring both the technical and community and climate equity advisory committees together. And while it'd be better to have us all in person to meet one another, one of the things we really want to make sure as we go forward is that these aren't two committees working in silos, that they're really working towards the same thing. They both have very specific objectives, but there needs to be collaboration between the two. We want to develop an awareness and common understanding of the meeting norms. What are the expectations of how we're going to run the meetings, understand all of our roles. We want to have a brief discussion about climate equity. Climate equity is at the core of the SA Climate Ready Plan, and it's going to be really at the forefront of all our conversations, so introducing that concept. We want to, again, I hope you all have read the plan, but we want to, again, discuss very briefly what are the components of the climate plan and what are the objectives. We also want to highlight what we've been working on. While this past year has been difficult for everyone, a lot of other things going on, we have been very actively working on implementing the plan. And so Julia can provide a very sort of high-level overview of all the things we've been working on, and we believe will help inform some of the work of the committees going forward. And then finally, originally we were going to have an exercise around prioritization, but as we discussed it a little more, we're going to be presenting a lot of information to you. And I think we decided we wouldn't be doing you all justice, trying to cram in a prioritization exercise at the end of this meeting. So I think we're going to work with you all and just do some reflection activities to really understand from you what would be a productive process. So we can make sure we take that into consideration before we meet early next year. And then also sort of brainstorm, what does success look like? We'll be putting a lot of work together on this, but what are the shared visions that we can have for this? So that's our goal. It may not take the full time that we have allotted, but we wanted to make sure that we provided enough time for conversation. Next slide, please. So when we talk about climate change, we are talking about what the future holds for our younger, newer generations and all life on this planet. However, it's important to reflect on those who were here before us, tens of thousands of years, who were stewards of this land and who continue leading efforts to protect this land. By their example, we honor the 7 generations before us and the 7 generations to come. We acknowledge with respect that the land we are on is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Kwawatakan, Hankawa, and Humanos peoples and all other tribes not explicitly stated. We now show our respect for the land that we are on and the people that previously inhabited it with a moment of gratitude and reflection, recognizing the responsibility we have to those who came before us and those who are yet to come. Great. Thank you so much for taking that moment. Now I'll turn this over to Mina for any public comments.
Hello, everyone. So for this meeting, we actually did not receive any public comments. So I'll just go ahead and take this time to remind everybody that we do have a formal process. It is posted on our agendas, on our official agendas online. So if you or anybody that wants to make a public comment in another meeting, please go ahead and check it out. And that is all for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Mina. And now we'll get into the really sort of probably the most important part of this is who's here, an introduction. So Nick, you want to take us away?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I'll go ahead and start off with the introductions, and I'll work through starting off with the folks who are the main panelists. That Doug called out, the facilitators and members from the Office of Sustainability. And then just to make it easy so that we're not running over the top of each other because we're virtual, I'll call on each individual person to introduce themselves. So I'll start off. My name is Nick Brigette. My preferred pronouns are he, him. I'm going to be leading the technical and community committee as far as facilitation. And I'm with the Y group here in San Antonio. Mina?
You said Mina, right?
Did you want to introduce yourself?
I can go. So my name is Mina Desi. My preferred pronouns are she, her, and I am the climate program manager for the city of San Antonio.
Lupita?
Hello, everyone. I'm Lupita Gonzalez from the Thrive Advisory. My preferred pronouns are she, her, ella. And I'll be the lead facilitator for the Climate Equity Advisory Committee, also co-facilitator for technical with Nicholas. That's it.
Julia?
Everyone, I'm Julia Murphy, she, hers, and I'm the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of San Antonio. Thanks for being here.
And Doug?
Hi, everybody. Doug Melnick, Chief Sustainability Officer. My preferred pronouns are he and him.
Okay, and starting with the different committee members, Mr. Aaron Arguello.
Hi there, y'all. My name is Aaron Arguello. Preferred pronouns are he, him. I'm on the Climate Equity Committee, and I am the advocacy organizer at Move Texas.
Thank you. And I will apologize in advance if I mispronounce anybody's name. Please, you'll not offend me in the least if you need to correct my pronunciation. We want to make sure we get that correct. So, Ms. Adelita Cantu.
Yes, hi, my name is Adelita Cantu. I am an associate professor at UT Health San Antonio School of Nursing and preferred pronouns she, her.
Aqua Garcia.
Hi everyone, my name is Anakwa Garcia. My pronouns are she, her, and ella. I am on the Climate Equity Group, and I represent Southwest Workers Union.
Mr. Jesus Garcia Gonzalez.
Hello everyone, my name is Cesar Gonzalez. I'm with the Climate Equity Committee from Catholic Charity. Pronouns are him.
Thank you. Ms. Harja Kaur.
Everyone, my name is Harja Kaur. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm going to be on the Climate Equity Committee, and I'm here bringing my expertise as an environmental and climate change lawyer and policy expert.
Ms. Diana Lopez Perez.
Everybody, I'm Diana Lopez. Good evening, and my personal pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm part of the Climate Equity Group, and I've done a lot of work around environmental justice here in San Antonio, and I'm with Centro por la Justicia, and the project you might know us from is Southwest Workers Union.
Thank you. Ms. Eloisa Portillo Morales. Ms.
Eloisa, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Eloisa Portillo Morales. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm on the Climate Equity Committee, and my expertise is climate and equity.
Thank you. Mr. Joshua Scott.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My preferred pronoun is he, him. I'm part of the Climate Equity. I represent St. Philip's College, where I'm the department chair, and my expertise is workforce development.
All right, thank you. Dr. Joe Simpson.
Hi, my preferred pronouns are he, him. I'm on the Climate Equity Committee, and my expertise is sociology, specifically environmental sociology, climate issues, and environmental justice.
Thank you. Mr. Tristan Tovar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tristan Tovar. My pronouns are he and him. I will be on the Climate Equity Committee, and I work for the San Antonio Housing Authority as a sustainability specialist.
Thank you. Ms. Didi Belmares.
Hi, I'm Didi Belmares. I'm a climate justice organizer with Public Citizen. I'm on the technical and community committee, and my preferred pronouns are she, her. Thank you.
Ms. Ashley Bird.
Hi, my name is Ashley Bird. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I am on the Technical and Community Committee, and I am here with Texas Butterfly Ranch.
Thank you. Mr. Rick Cavender.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Cavender. My preferred pronouns are he and him. I have been selected to be part of the Climate Ready Technical Community Advisory Committee to present the voice and views of the automotive industry in San Antonio.
Thank you. Mr. James E. Cooper, Jr.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Cooper, as previously stated. My pronouns is he and him. I am on the Technical Community Advisory Committee. In my organization I work with is Project Quest. My expertise is workforce development.
Thank you. Ms. Estea Cota Trevino.
Hi, it's Estella. My name is Estella Cota Trevino, and my preferred pronouns are she and her. I'm a civil engineer, and I specialize in water transmission utility design.
Thank you. Mr. Matt Cox.
Hey, I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates. I'm also a civil engineer here in San Antonio. I work with the Real Estate Council of San Antonio. I'm also active in the Urban Land Institute and he, him. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Neil Devaj.
Hi, everyone. I'm Neil Debbage. My preferred pronouns are he and him. I'm an assistant professor at UT San Antonio with expertise in urban ecology and the urban heat island effect.
Thank you. Mrs. Ashley Harris.
So my name is Ashley Harris. My preferred pronouns are she and her. I am on the Technical and Community Committee, and I am with USAA.
Thank you. Mr. Stephen Luke.
Hello, can you hear me? My name is Stephen Lucky. I'm with a local nonprofit called Gardopia Gardens that teaches about healthy lifestyles through garden-based learning. My background is in nutrition, biochemistry, and organic farming, and I'm looking forward to representing all the trees and the bees, and as well as my community, to better San Antonio.
Thank you. Dr. Kelly Lyons.
Hello, I'm Kelly Lyons, she, her. I'm a professor of biology at Trinity University, and I'm also an ecologist and a plant biologist.
Thank you. Mr. Francisco Manon.
Hi, my name is Francisco Magnon, preferred pronouns he, him. I am member of the Technical and Community Advisory Committee. I am a senior manager support services with the Human Credit Union.
Thank you. Mr. Richard McDonald.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Richard McDonald. My pronouns are he, him. I'm on the Technical and Community Advisory Committee, and I represent the Senior Corporate Director for Environmental Affairs and Sustainability for HEB.
Thank you. This is Stephanie Moreno.
Hi, Stephanie Moreno. Preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm on the Technical and Community Advisory Committee, and I am with the South Texas Energy and Economic Roundtable.
Thank you. Dr. Jimmy Perkins.
Yes, Jimmy Perkins. I go by he and him. I'm retired as a former dean of the University of Texas School of Public Health, and I'm also an environmental health scientist, and I'm on the Technical and Community Committee.
Thank you. Mr. John Placia. Mr. John Placia, if you're muted, you need to take yourself off mute.
I don't see him. I'd give him the, yeah, so maybe he's having trouble logging in because I spoke to him.
Okay. Miss Rosalinda Sanquiche.
Hi, I'm Rosalinda Sanquiche. My preferred pronouns are her, she, ella. I'm the sustainability manager for CH Ganther, and my area of expertise is corporate sustainability and finance.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan Weber.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan Weber. I go by he and him, and I am on the Technical and Community Advisory Committee, and I'm with the World Resources Institute.
Thank you. Miss Melissa Bryant. Melissa, are you on mute, or are we? We'll go on to to Karen Goose.
Hi, Karen Guz. My pronouns are she and her. I'm on the Technical and Community Committee, and I work for San Antonio Water System as the Conservation Director.
Thank you. Ms. Cami Horn.
Good evening, everyone. Cami Horn. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm on the Technical and Community Committee, and I am representing Via Metropolitan Transit.
Thank you. Ms. Miriam Juckett.
Hello, everyone. I'm Miriam Juckett with Southwest Research Institute, and my preferred pronouns are she, her. I'm on the Technical and Community Committee, and I'm the Senior Program Manager of our Environmental Protection and External Hazard Assessments Program.
Thank you. Mr. Marvin Pear. Okay.
I don't see him.
Okay, we'll go Mrs. Angela Rodriguez.
Hey, everybody. I am Angela Rodriguez. My preferred pronouns are she and her. I am on the technical committee and I am the Director of Climate and Sustainability at CPS Energy.
All right, thank you. That's everybody I have on my list. Was there anybody that we missed that would like to introduce themselves?
I did introduce myself, Adelita Cantu. I'm sorry, I forgot to say that I'm on the Climate Equity Committee and my expertise is in population health.
All right, thank you.
Hello, and my name is Melissa Bryant. Sorry, I'm having Wi-Fi connections, but my preferred are she and her, and I'm on the Technical and Community Advisory Committee, and I am the Director for Technical Services at the San Antonio River Authority.
Thank you.
Can I add one real quick? I introduced myself. This is Joe Simpson. I forgot to mention I'm with Texas A&M University, San Antonio.
Thank you.
To say that my pronouns are he and him, and I'm on the Technical and Community.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Okay, Doug, I think that covers the introductions. Okay, on the meeting norms, okay, so going over the meeting norms, Lupita and I will take turns going over these. These are basically just the initial things we want you to think about when we're meeting in these committee meetings. And the first one up is to stay engaged. We want, these meetings, we're having them quarterly. So it's important that when we're in the meetings, we're able to stay present and pay attention. Even when, if it's towards the end of the day or other things are going on, it's going to be important that all of us are on point and engaged in the discussion. Lupita? Okay, I'll go ahead and carry on. So part number 2 was to...
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
So the second one is speak your truth. And so we all have our wisdom. And so we want to be able to create some space for all of our wisdoms. And so we encourage you to speak your truth about your own experiences.
And number 3 is no fixing. So there is an underlying theme in these meeting norms that really relates to the fact that regardless of the committee that you are on, there's a good chance that topics or subjects can put you in a place where you might feel uncomfortable or broaching subjects that you may or may not agree with, and that's fine. And so when we say stay engaged, and it says even when you're shutting down, be aware of how you're feeling. And so the no fixing is recognizing that everybody's coming to these committees and these subjects with their own background. And the issue is not to fix them, but for each of us to understand what's going on and be okay with those feelings.
Yeah, I think number 4 is adjacent to the no fixing because it's very similar. So experience discomfort. So learn to become comfortable with the discomfort. And I just want to state that, we as human beings immediately will fight, flee, or freeze when we hear something that might trigger us or we don't agree with. And so for 3 and 4, I think it's really just trying to encourage us to take a breath, whatever tools you have to just kind of like breathe for a few moments, pause before having that visceral reaction, right? And these are things that we will get better at so that we can learn to become comfortable with the discomfort.
Yeah. Number 5, take risks, just as 3 and 4 are very much related. 2 and 5 are very much related in speaking your truth and taking risks. Being willing to say what's on your mind. And even if what's on your mind is in disagreement with what is being said, it's important that we get everyone's views out there so that we have a comprehensive view, and we're looking at this from as many perspectives as possible so that we come up with the best solution possible. The saying that no one of us is as smart as all of us is really key here, and so we need to make sure that we're leveraging all of our strengths and being willing to take a risk, put yourself out there, and share your background and your impressions is going to be very important.
Yeah, I want to also add, taking risks could look like asking unpopular questions or on unpopular items or subjects. It may also, taking risks might also look like showing emotion or vulnerability. So yeah, just some more examples of taking risks. Number 6, listen for understanding. So try and understand where another person's coming from, but be careful not to compare your experiences with another person's. I don't know if we have any attorneys or legal folks in the room, but they're really great at listening to produce an argument, right? So I would just encourage us to listen, to understand, not listen so much to judge, but to really understand.
And the last one there, expect and accept non-closure. The idea being that when we're having these discussions and we are in a position where we might be discussing something that's uncomfortable or you don't necessarily agree with, the fact that we don't wrap it up neatly in a bow is okay. So recognize that it's going to be okay for us not to get to closure. Expect that, because the topics and conversations we're having are weighty and important, and are have the potential to engender disagreement, and that's okay. So just recognize that and be okay with that as we go forward.
Are there any clarifying questions on these meeting norms? And I guess as we move forward, we could perhaps add to these as our group might decide, but we thought these would be a good starting meeting norms to have. Is everyone cool with it? In agreement? Thumbs up? Awesome. Thank you.
Well, hi, everyone. This is Julia again, and I'm going to go through, as a reminder, the committee roles and coordination that we have set up, just because it's been a while since you applied. So we'll just run through what you signed up for, and here we go. So as mentioned earlier, the council was approved by an ordinance that created 2 advisory committees, the Technical and Community Advisory Committee and the Climate Equity Advisory Committee. The Climate Equity Advisory Committee that was approved by council ordinance has 10 at-large representatives from community-based organizations and other key stakeholders representing the interests of low-income populations, communities of color, marginalized populations, as well as other key stakeholders representing the interests of the chair and vice chair of the Technical and Community Advisory Committee. The committee's mission is to provide input on the implementation of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan to ensure an equity-centered approach and equitable outcomes. And specific tasks of this committee include bringing diverse stakeholder opinions to the table with a specific focus on marginalized and vulnerable communities. We also refer to them as frontline communities. We also would like this committee to ensure climate equity considerations are brought forth in all actions and priorities, And they would be helping us identify, tracking, and reporting climate equity metrics that we'll be measuring to make sure that we're staying on track with our commitments. The Technical and Community Advisory Committee has 17 at-large members and 5 organizational members who include CPS Energy, Joint Base San Antonio, San Antonio River Authority, San Antonio Water System, and VIA. Plus, we have 1 additional research collaborator from Southwest Research Institute, and the chair or vice chair of the Climate Equity Committee will be serving on the Technical and Community Advisory Committee as well. This committee is designed to provide expertise, diverse perspectives, and input regarding implementation of the CAP as the city works to achieve greenhouse gas reduction and climate adaptation goals. Its mission is to advise city staff and city council on the advancement and equity-centered implementation of the plan. Specific tasks of this committee include advising staff and city council on behalf of the entire community and key stakeholders, and helping to promote and engage the community at large on CAP activities. Next slide, please. So as part of the committees, here are the expectations that members will be achieving. So you will be attending and actively participating in quarterly, approximately 2-hour-long meetings, and we'll be laying out the schedule at the end of the meeting so you can start planning. Attending the annual Joint CAP Advisory Committee retreat. Hopefully we'll get to do that in person in the future. Participating in equity training, which will be rolling out soon. Preparing for the quarterly meetings by reviewing the meeting agenda and completing any pre-meeting homework or reading that would help you be more informed for the meeting. Alert Office of Sustainability staff of conflicts to participation. Assist with community and stakeholder engagement, as we mentioned earlier. And finally, work towards successful outcomes, which we know you all will be doing. Thank you again for participating in these committees.
Hi again, this is Nina, and now we will be moving over to climate equity and why we need to consider frontline communities in making decisions about how and which strategies to implement. So in the first map here, you'll see what is called the Social Vulnerability Index, or SVI. This index helps us identify which communities are likely to need the most support in the event of a hazardous event or natural disaster, and that includes people living in poverty, those that are chronically ill or disabled, and people under 65 or over 65 and under 5. As you can see, the areas that have a higher vulnerability index are also the hottest areas, as shown by the urban heat island effect map, and are also the areas with the least tree canopy cover, meaning that these communities are going to continue to see adverse effects during extreme climate events. Now, in order to prioritize and address the issues that frontline communities will be facing, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. Yes.
Are we able to ask questions or do we wait?
We will have a break in just a moment where we can open it up for questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan was written with an ethical framework centered on equity. And equity, as defined by the city's Office of Equity, means that policymaking, service delivery, and distribution of resources account for the different histories, challenges, and needs of the people we serve. It differs from equality, which treats everybody the same despite disparate outcomes. Considering those definitions, we crafted one around climate equity, which we defined as ensuring that communities burdened the most by climate change, that contribute the least to climate change, and those that are most socially vulnerable play a role in the just transformation of systems. Now, to the right, you'll see some metrics that were considered in the CAP and further highlight the need for this approach. In the top, you'll see median wages, which are lower for people of color, and then on the bottom, you see ASMA rates, which are higher for people of color. So in order to ensure that we're following through on the ethical framework of the CAP, we created a screening tool to help us understand the impact of each of the strategies in the plan. You can see all the categories to be considered here, numbered. They include access and accessibility to things like jobs, housing, education, and healthy foods, affordability, cultural preservation, health, both physical and mental, and safety and security. And to the right, you'll see a sample of the tool as it appears in the plan. Our goal is to run all the strategies through this tool so that we can analyze the results and make changes to support frontline communities as needed prior to implementation. And as I mentioned before, this leads us into the next piece.
So we're about to take a 5-minute break. At this point in time, we'd be happy to entertain any questions. I know there's a lot of material that you were just exposed to. So if you have questions, if you want to use the raise hand feature on the when you have the participants list up, or you should have access to a little, what looks like a little hand to raise hand. That'll allow us to call on folks that have questions. You can also feel free to enter your questions into the chat window. And as this is being recorded, if for some reason we don't get a chance to address it, we will be able to address it at a later date. So if something occurs to you as you are going through the presentation and you don't want to forget it, you can put it in the chat window and we'll address it. So with that being said, before we stop for our 5-minute break, does anybody have a question they'd like to raise at this point?
This is Dr. Cantu. I did put it in the chat box as well as raise my hand. I don't know if you can see it or not. I was not sure if I was doing it correctly. So the question I had was on the vulnerability index, the slide that you had up on the vulnerability indexes for the tree canopy. It's small, so was not sure about zip codes, or was this by city council district? And what was the how do you interpret the color coded legend? It's just too small, and it's just my eyes.
Yeah, and I could Adelita, thank you for the question. These aren't the best, and they definitely don't show well. Basically, the darker the green is, the heavier the canopy. If this was bigger, you'd be able to see that in the city center, there's much more need. The caveat for both the heat island and the forestry, the tree canopy, there's new data coming. Our parks department is, I think, fairly soon finalizing a new tree inventory, which will be very interesting. And we're doing some additional work with UTSA on urban heat islands. So this data will change, and we'll be able to share with you, hopefully, as soon as we can, early next year, or at a later date, some more up-to-date data for this.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a quick question. Will this slide deck be available to us after the meeting, or I'm not really sure if we mentioned that at the beginning of the.
Yes, we'll make this available, and then it'll also be made public as well. It'll be on our website as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Doug.
Okay, so if there are no more questions right now, I've got 6:45 on my clock on my computer, so 5 minutes from whatever closest timepiece you have says, and we'll start back up at 6:50. If you can, when you're back and ready, keep your camera on. We'll use your presence in the screen as proof that you're there, or you can type into the chat window that you're available and ready to go. So 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, so it looks like the 5 minutes are up. Mina, can you see if most of the people are back? I'm not able to see all of the screens. Looks like most everybody is, from what I can tell.
Yeah, I think so. The majority is back.
All right, we'll go to the next slide.
Okay, I almost started talking, but I remembered to mute myself, so I'm learning. So, now we're going to get into a little more detail about sort of what, sort of what this is and why. And I think one of the things we wanted to touch briefly is on some of the policy direction that led us here. Basically, back in August 2016, Council adopted the SA Tomorrow Sustainability Plan. Wasn't really a climate plan, but it had a lot of the same elements. It had mitigation strategies around energy, transportation, adaptation strategies around biodiversity and extreme heat, greenhouse gas inventory, climate trends, vulnerabilities, all that good stuff. But the one thing it didn't have was any targets, any specific targets. And so that's where this plan is different. And this plan really grew out of an action that Council took on June 22nd, 2017, which was a Council resolution in support of the Paris Climate Agreement. The good news that we can really share now is we're back in the Paris Climate Agreement. The current president pulled this out, and our official withdrawal occurred, I believe, the day after the election. But President-elect Biden has stated that we're back in, and the Paris Climate Agreement it's a non-binding international agreement, basically saying, we need to take action. We need to do everything we can to limit global climate change to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius in order to avert the most severe impacts of climate change. And then we need to adapt and prepare for climate change, particularly with our most vulnerable communities. So that's really the main policy push that created the need to create this plan. The other big thing, policy-wise, is air quality. San Antonio is one of the last, if not the last, big city in the country that was designated in non-attainment of ground level ozone. And not only is ground level ozone a public health issue, particularly impacting marginalized and low-income populations the most, but there's an economic impact of that to that as well. So that's another driving force behind this, and we're lucky enough to have had this big milestone of having Council adopting this plan last October with the goals of net carbon neutrality by 2050 and a clear plan to adapt to climate change. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I just wanted to bring up for everybody, it's really important to sort of look at where we are now. This past year has been unique in our lifetime. Because I think it's important to how we know, to help inform how we proceed. But science tells us that climate change is not only continuing, but it's accelerating. And it's important to place this in context. And so the goals of SA Climate Ready are at the intersection of equity, the environment, and our economy. And as such, it's important to recognize that the climate plan can play a key role in our response to COVID-19, the economic recession, and addressing systemic racism. And so specifically, this plan that you all are going to be really sort of digging into as we go forward, it's focused on reducing emissions and improving air quality and public health outcomes, reducing unnecessary energy consumption, which results in lowered energy bills, saving money for residents, businesses, and institutions. It promotes equity and environmental and climate justice, increases economic competitiveness and access to green job opportunities, and builds community resilience. So those are really some big items that we really need to be aware of. And so it's important to recognize that we can not only leverage the implementation of this climate plan with these current priorities, but that there's an opportunity to ensure that the activities currently underway, the decisions that we're making now, the investments we're made in response to these issues can also reinforce our climate goals and objectives. Next slide, please. So now I'm really briefly just going to touch on something that you all probably are aware of. We're facing these impacts now. And we always used to talk about climate change as something that was decades away. And all you have to do is turn on the news now and know that's not the case. This past July was one of the hottest months on record, 14 days over 100 degrees. 4 days with record-breaking temperatures, an average high that was 5 degrees above average, and that trend line on the right showing our increase in temperatures over time is happening. We saw record-breaking wildfires across the West Coast and the Northwest, and we have our own wildfire vulnerabilities, and at the same time, the wildfires out west impact our own air quality, and then finally, all you have to do is take a look at the Atlantic hurricane season. Basically those projections were that we were going to have an above-average hurricane season, and that's what we saw. 30 named storms, including 13 hurricanes. So, we're experiencing these impacts now. And these are just some examples. We have a document we can share with you also. It's a vulnerability and risk assessment that has a lot more of these impacts. Next slide, please. So, talking about what we're experiencing now, we also need to look into the future. And that's really sort of the meat of what we're facing. We had worked with a professor from UTSA to develop climate projections based upon best practices. And you'll see some indicators here: summer maximum temperature, hot days in excess of 100 degrees, warm nights that's above 90 degrees, and annual precipitation. And you'll see these two pathways, low emissions and high emissions. And basically, these are based upon modeling consistent with the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that looks at the CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere over a period of time, and basically looking at how much we can reduce those emissions as opposed to not reducing them. And so the low emissions pathway is a model that operates under the assumption that we do everything we can as a global community, and the high emissions is we don't. And unfortunately, the science is telling us we're tracking on the high emissions side. So what does that look like? Maximum temperatures increasing by 10 degrees, almost 100 days more above 100 degrees. It doesn't cool off as much at night. It gets drier, but when we experience storms and events, they're more severe. So if we think about this long term, what does it mean for our vulnerable residents? What does it mean for our businesses? It's got big consequences, and we need to get ahead of how we answer those questions and how do we mitigate as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So I'm not going to dwell on this because there's a lot of text here, and I apologize. But basically, one of the things we really need to frame this conversation around is there's a cost to not doing anything. I think one of the things, it's not only San Antonio that's having these conversations, but there's always the question and concern about how much this is going to cost. How much is it going to cost to change? But the costs of not doing anything are more extreme. We're talking about impacts on public health, lost lives, lost jobs, increased wildfires, our infrastructure. When you start looking at those changing weather patterns and increased heat and increased flooding, what does that mean for our energy supply, our water supply, our roads, our airport, our quality of life, our tourism, our World Heritage areas? It's going to cut across everything in our community. And then finally, I think one of the things that's really sort of becoming clearer and clearer is that there's an impact on our financial markets. More and more entities are coming out and saying, there's an issue here. The most recent is the Federal Reserve made a statement just a couple weeks ago saying that climate change is a real risk that we face. And so it behooves us, not just as a community, but also part of a global community, to realize that there's some real big impact coming, and now's the time to act. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn over to Nina to just talk a little bit. What are some of the metrics that we use when we're talking about climate action?
Yeah, so now to the fun stuff, the data. So one of the best ways to prioritize strategies is to complete a greenhouse gas inventory, because it shows us the biggest sources of emissions. So you can see the pie chart on the right-hand side is emissions for 2016. You'll notice that the transportation and building energy sector are the biggest sources of greenhouse gas in San Antonio. And although we cannot ignore the other sources when we are faced with limited resources, The inventory helps us to focus on the initiatives that will potentially have the biggest impact. Now, if you look at the bottom graph, it shows the progress we have made in reducing emissions since 2013. As you can see, we have made some progress, but we definitely need to increase the scale and scope of our work if we are to reach our goal of net carbon neutrality by 2050. And in the next slide, I'll show you guys the projection of the path we need to follow to remain on track. So on the right-hand side, you'll see our interim targets. So 41% by 2030, 71% by 2040, and finally 100% by 2050. Aside from the main targets, we also created interim targets for stationary, aka buildings, transportation, solid waste, water supply, and industrial processes. And on the left-hand side, again, we apologize, it's really small, but we will post this up, and it is included in the cap. I do want to note that the orange line represents business as usual. The green line represents the minimum path to carbon neutrality, and the thick gray line represents the IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their preferred pathway. So the special report, which is referenced on the right-hand side, is the basis of our goal for reducing the emissions to net zero by 2050. And before I move on from this slide, I do want to mention that we are currently working on the greenhouse gas inventory for 2019, which should be finalized and available for review towards the end of this year or the beginning of the next year. In order to achieve our goals, the CAB outlines several strategies that are broken up into either mitigation or adaptation. On the blue side, we'll talk about mitigation, which focuses on reducing the amount and speed of future climate change by reducing emissions of heat-trapping gases or removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And this section is broken up into 6 subsections, including increasing carbon-free energy, reducing building energy consumption, reducing transportation energy consumption, advancing the circular economy, promoting biodiversity and healthy ecosystems, and educate and empower. The plan has a total of 28 community strategies and 13 municipal strategies. And on the other side, we have adaptation in green. And adaptation is the process of adjusting to actual or expected climate and its effects. In human system, adaptation can be moderated to avoid harm. And in some natural systems, human intervention may actually facilitate adjustment to the expected changes. This section is broken up into 7 subsections, including increasing infrastructure resilience, strengthening public health systems, enhancing emergency management and community preparedness, promoting, restoring, and protecting green infrastructure and ecosystems, protecting local food security, increasing resiliency and awareness and outreach, and ensuring equity and adaptation. And the plan has a total of 45 mixed community and municipal strategies. Now I'll turn it over to Julia.
Hey, Mina, Julia, before you go on, we've got a couple of folks that have their hands raised. I noticed Adelita was first and then Ryan. Adelita, did you have a specific question?
That was from before.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, and it may be an easy one to answer, but Mina, I was wondering if we have any interim data or anything on the inventories. I know we're not doing a full inventory until 2019, but from just a couple data points, right, we appear to have, a 2-point trajectory, but I don't really know since 2016, do we have anything to assume that's continuing to trend, or I'm just wondering what we do have, knowing that we don't have a full inventory.
So
Mina,
we'll actually have the full inventory. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mina. I didn't mean to jump in. You can answer.
Oh, no, it's okay. So the 2019 inventory will be a full inventory. It just has not been completed yet. And Doug, if you want to add.
I guess I'm just asking if we have a sense of where it's going.
Yeah, so so we're still finalizing the data. We're still sort of going through everything. What I'll say is it's not where we need it to be. I think it's if we look at per capita, great. We've grown, and yet not only we've seen a reduction, but we're not talking about per capita, and so clearly it's going to show we need to do more work. but I don't want to get out ahead of that because I think we're still trying to validate all the data.
Thank you.
Great question, and I'll just add to that that data will be made available, or the results of it, to the committee, because it will be helping to prioritize perhaps where we need to focus going forward. And so I will jump off here and tell you that it has been an unprecedented year. Focus has changed at the city level to meet really immediate priorities. But as Doug pointed out in an earlier slide, much of the work that we were doing in the background really relates to the present situation. And I want to just briefly go over some more text with you on this slide to kind of fill you in on some activities that we have been working on. Many have launched already, many are in progress, and many will benefit from the guidance and the expertise that are on these two committees that you have joined. So in the area of community sustainability, we are working on a benchmarking and disclosure policy. And that is part of, you'll see in the little tiny green and blue text there next to some of these. These were commitments made as our participation in the American Cities Climate Challenge, which we've been a part of for the past about year and a half. The good news is that the support coming from the American Cities Climate Challenge has actually been extended for 6 months. So while we thought that our access to these great advisors and consultants across the country would be coming to an end at the end of 2020, we actually have them until June of next year. So that's great. You'll get to probably intersect with some of those initiatives. So benchmarking and disclosure, we are also working actively on EV and solar readiness policy in new construction. Just last month, we launched the Mayor's Youth Engagement Council on Climate Initiatives. They're having their second meeting tomorrow night virtually, and this is has been and will continue to be a great platform for our area youth to have a voice in future climate action and adaptation. And we anticipate that they will also intersect with our two adult committees as well. Also, we're working on a heat vulnerability analysis. We've just kicked that off with some researchers at UTSA. So we'll be updating some of that data that was shown previously on another slide and getting more granular at the neighborhood level. Earlier this year, we were able to launch property assessed clean energy, or PACE, financing for building improvements, energy efficiency and water improvements. And that was a great hoorah, because that had been something that had been proposed and worked on for a number of years. So that is in place now. We think we have a couple of projects that are actually in the pipeline who will be utilizing PACE soon. On December 4th, just right around the corner, we will be having our SA Climate Ready Forum, and we invite you all to attend that. It's going to be a virtual day-long event showcasing many of the things that I'm talking about here on this slide in a different way. We'll have little videos showcasing a number of the projects, as well as some great talking heads telling us about what they envision for the future, including Mayor Nierenberg. Mina mentioned the 2019 greenhouse gas inventory. It really is on its final, almost done. So you'll be seeing that shortly. And then I'll just mention CPS is on the call, but they have launched their Flex Step and Flex Bundle programs, actively seeking renewable energy resources and resources that we may not even know about yet. So Angela Rodriguez is the expert here from that team, and I'm sure she'll be able to share a lot more on that as we go forward. In the area of municipal sustainability, or leading by example, we have been training our own through leadership and employee CAP training. So much like you are getting today and you will be getting through these committee meetings, we will be teaching our city staff and giving them resources to educate and empower them so that in their jobs and in their personal lives, they will understand what our citywide objectives are around the climate plan and climate action. dovetailing in that, we've done an analysis with each department's businesses and tried to align them with certain mitigation and adaptation strategies in the CAP, showcasing how they're already probably doing a lot of this, but how they can relate it back to climate action. We are working on our green fleet policy that we've had one in place, but we're updating it, and we'll be introducing electric vehicles into the city fleet in 2021. So that's a real nice leap forward in sustainable transportation. We are also working on eventually moving to 100% renewable energy for city-owned buildings. And so that's in progress. Looking at cool pavement pilot projects. This one will be really interesting. There's a movement across the country. And so we've been partnering with cities such as Los Angeles and Phoenix and students who are working on this in some universities across the country to roll out some pilot projects, and San Antonio's on that list. Still working on municipal energy efficiency projects. That is one of our feather in our cap cool programs that we've been working on for almost a decade. We have saved millions of dollars in avoided costs to the city of San Antonio. And that program in particular gets a lot of kudos. And in fact, it was just in the paper this week as a shining light across the country for the way municipalities should work. And finally, not finally, but woven through all of this is racial equity and capacity building. In particular, Office of Sustainability staff is doing a really deep dive on racial equity and capacity building exercises. And then we are infiltrating all of that learning into our business models as well. Transportation, I'll mention a couple of things. During this last year, we really launched an EVSA, Electric Vehicle San Antonio Public Information Campaign. We have received funding for that to continue it, and we're waiting for that additional funding to kick in. In the meantime, we are looking at enhancing our community EV charging infrastructure network. That contract will be going to council next month. We just presented it to the Community Health and Equity Committee yesterday, who signed off on it. So we're hoping that we'll be launching some new EV charging in San Antonio as early as the first quarter of 2021. We work with area schools on enhancing air quality through our voluntary anti-idling program. And that program is funded and ongoing. The next couple are part of the American Cities Climate Challenge, working with VIA on high frequency public transit network. And all of y'all realize that the ballot initiative that was on the November ballot just passed to eventually help VIA's bottom line so that they can do some enhancements, commuter incentives as well, and public transit speed, reliability, and user experience. So all of those things are we are actively working on, and can't wait to tell you more about it as we go forward. Next slide, please. One other huge initiative that we expect to be considered in early 2021 is our Climate Action Engagement and Communications Initiative. Many of you may have heard that this was an activity that we were hoping to launch in FY20 immediately on the heels of the passage of the CAP. However, because of the events that took place around the world, it became necessary for us to really relook at the scope of work and relook at how we were going to be engaging grassroots organizations and the community. And so we took a pause, worked a little bit on the scope, and have revised it, and we'll be taking that forward to City Council hopefully in early 2021. But this initiative will be our megaphone for all of the work that we're doing and that you will be doing with us. And just, I'll read off of the slide real quick. It will involve social media and marketing. We'll be customizing the campaign messaging to specific audiences in the community based on people's value systems, whatever they relate to, and whatever will, help them understand the climate agenda. we'll be listening. We'll be going on listening tours and listening to the people of San Antonio, hearing what they consider to be priorities. Everything will be translated into Spanish and other languages if necessary. And our main goal here is to drive awareness and promote behavior change and action. As with everything else we're doing, huge focus on equity. Again, we want to make sure that all voices, to the extent possible, are heard. And we also thank you for helping to engage people in the community as well. So we'll be updating you more on that and the timeline on that as we get closer, but stay tuned. Thank you.
Hey, Julia, real quick, we had a question from Harjit in the chat window on what capacities are being built in the racial equity and capacity building bullet point. You could provide a little clarity on what that means.
Certainly, and I would like to give that question to Lupita Gonzalez, if she doesn't mind answering.
Maybe not.
You're muted, Lupita, if you're speaking.
I keep talking when I'm muted. This is not good. Okay, so thanks, Julia, for passing it over. Racial equity capacity building basically is, you know, historically our country our society has been built on very racist, by racist systems and institutions. And so especially right now, it's a awareness that more and more organizations and government agencies are acknowledging and really taking on. So racial equity capacity building means going back and getting training and increased awareness of what are the ways in which we are developing policy. Is the way that we're developing policy or the way that we are conducting our business internally, as well as programming that affects people externally, is it not racist or is it anti-racist? Because there's a difference. It's not enough to not be racist. I think that it's important to be anti-racist. And I'll give you an example. If let's say that we say, you know, there's funding coming in, so let's distribute this funding evenly through all districts, right? So one would argue, well, that's being equal, right? But what would be racial equity would be to take a closer look at the different districts or even neighborhoods and populations and identify how the needs may be very different. And so then the policies or funds to address those needs should also be different, right? So that everyone is lifted. And so those most marginalized would be lifted as well. So, or actually would be lifted first and foremost. So race equity is just getting more keen and educated on how to identify these things more quickly, and then how to be able to produce policy and processes that really address equity. Does that answer your question? I can't see.
And she was in the chat, so we'll wait for her to respond. There was another question from Rick Cavender. What investment level is the city implementing on EV charging infrastructure, and will these stations be universal to all EVs? Yes, they will be universal to all EVs, agnostic, we call them. What we will be taking to council in December is a potential contract with Blink Charging, and this will be for charging infrastructure on city-owned property. So we're going to be looking at surface parking lots, parks, libraries, pre-K for SA, education centers, etc., property that we control. And then we are hoping that Blink will be establishing relationships in the private sector as well and expanding the network further.
Great, thank you.
And Rick, sorry, Julie, I'll just jump in really quickly. the way it's set up is there's no cost to the city. We're basically saying, hey, here's our parking lots. Blink will come in, be responsible for all the costs associated with installation and operation. If there's any revenue generated, finger crossed, there's a revenue sharing component of it. So there's no cost to the city. We're just trying to put our assets up for potential use.
Yeah. Can I just say that in the experience we have with EV buyers, the visible charging infrastructure is so important to get that market going. You know, people want to know where they can go to charge and where these stations are. So when they're visible, we'll start selling a lot more of the EVs in the market.
Thank you. And I'll just, yes, it's a chicken and an egg situation. One more factoid on that. We have about 4,500 EVs registered in the CPS service territory right now, but we're anticipating up to 50,000 in 10 years. So it's going to start being adopted quickly, and having that charging infrastructure to relieve range anxiety should be a piece of that puzzle. So we're happy about it.
And Julia, there was another question from Adelita on how the Mayor's Youth Council was selected.
Thank you for that question. The Mayor's Youth Council is being administered by an organization that we have contracted with called EcoRise. EcoRise has been providing train the trainer curriculum for teachers in the classroom in San Antonio for a couple of years. And they have done engagement with youth and youth councils in other cities as well. So this was an initiative of the mayor's office, and we canvassed kind of the who was doing what in the community. The mayor's office did, and we helped them with that. And it became clear that EcoRise was a great fit for this project. So they conducted the interviews and selected the candidates. They are representative of all council districts across the city, and I believe there are 20 plus schools represented as well. They went through an interview process very similar to the adult advisory committees. So we basically, remember those 5 short questions that we had y'all answer on video that you had to answer real quick? We tailored those same questions to the youth. And so that's how they were interviewed and selected. And as I said, they've just launched. There was a press release that went out just today about that. So I'll put that in the chat for some more information.
And if I can just add really quickly, I'm Julie and I are, and Mina are really excited about this because these are really bright kids who are really engaged. And what we're hoping to do is to bring them into our meetings sometime, to have them engage with you all and bring what they're working on and what they're interested in, and also have them engage with city council. So again, it's about creating those next leaders sort of take over, but at the same time, I'm sure there's a lot that we can learn from them. So we really want to use them as a resource.
One more question. There was the age range is, I believe it's 14 to 17 or 18. It's mostly high school students. There might be 1 or 2 really bright middle school students. And yes, thank you. EcoRise is an outstanding organization, and they do very important work in schools, from Richard McDonald. So I'll put that press release in the chat and you can read more.
Okay, at this point, we wanted to start or have everyone take part in a reflection exercise. We've hit you with a lot of information related to how the committees were formed and what the tasking of the committees is, as well as the background of the report and data. And so at this point in time, we want to be able to ask 3 basic questions on reflection to give everybody a chance to provide their feedback. And I'm going to turn it over to Lupita to help with some of the instruction on specifically how we would like for you guys to engage with the board to help provide your reflection and feedback.
Okay, so I haven't really spoken with you since explaining racial equity and before that the introduction, but I'm really impressed to hear all of the wisdom that's in the room right now. So I feel very fortunate to be in all of your company. So I'm curious what we will see in this exercise, all the wisdom that may come out. I'm going to invite you, if you haven't done this before, we're going to use a whiteboard to do some brainstorming. So we're going to do this 3 times. So we'll use 3 different whiteboards. This is a fresh, clean slate right now that you see in front of you. If you look at the far left, you'll see little icons. If you want to, I'm going to go ahead and write down the first question. So what I did is I clicked on the T for text box, and I'm going to write down the question up at the corner. So I would love to invite you all to brainstorm in answering this question. What else do you need to more fully equip you for this role and or process? So again, feel free, you can click on that little double T on the far left, and then you click anywhere on the whiteboard to go ahead and provide your answers or your brainstorming.
I just want to ask, sorry, Lupita, does anybody see what Lupita wrote?
No.
No,
Okay.
I was going to ask if you could read the question.
Oh, you can't. Oh,
there it is.
Do you see it? Okay.
Showed up. There you go.
There's a little delay. Thanks for that, Doug. Also,
Sure.
if you see someone's comment and you'd like to, put a check mark, you could also do that. I think there's a box on the left side. Okay, that one I never see, Doug, so you might want to.
Yes. Yep, you're right. There's the box icon. You just click on it. You'll see a few options: square shape, oval shape, mark. So if I'll just put a check mark, you'll see the check mark.
Okay.
I do not see that, Doug.
I don't either. Maybe some of us can and some don't.
I'm going to be honest, we're not thrilled with WebEx. We're only planning on using WebEx for this one. We're planning on using Zoom going forward. But if you don't see it, you could also just take the drawing tool. Whoa, not the drawing tool.
The pen
tool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. Let me clear this.
Well, in an absolute, if you can't get it to come up clearly the way you would like, we have the chat window. So you can certainly utilize the chat window. So Miriam notes it's whiteboard's not working on iPads. Feel free to use the chat window and we can capture your feedback that way as well.
So we already have a couple coming in. So one is, where can we get list of bios of participants with contact information? Oh, I see. So like a directory with folks' bios. Yeah, we could provide that. Data. Clarity on the climate science and data. Examples of the types of feedback of information that COSA or city council would want from us. Leaders in climate sustainability, other city models that are being used. A list of what you expect us to advise on. Specific mechanisms through which we provide advice, briefings, etc. Leaders in climate sustainability, other city models that are being used. Would love to have more info on successes in other cities. No need to reinvent wheel. More conversations on expectations of for individual roles and committees. Directory of organizations working on this ecosystem.
Some of the chat feedback is I'm excited to get more information on initiatives that are getting started and more information about how vulnerable communities view climate change.
I would like additional information on where other cities are in relation to their CCAP. Best practices examples, understanding of how our discussions in committee are used for policy making.
Can I ask, in terms of data, and I guess we can get to it, what sort of data? Or is it, we could always have another conversation.
I wrote about data. I would just say, I mean, like you have the heat island map and the vulnerability index. And I'm always thinking about how these things we're thinking about changing, you know, prices, average bills for water, heating, electricity, access to, you know, services to develop renewable energy, distance from public transportation. I mean, there's all kinds of data that would feed back into solving some of these problems. And in general, you know, a one-stop shop where this stuff could be examined.
Okay, thank you.
And then I see best practices on adapting climate readiness from other cities around the world.
Some more of the chat feedback. Melissa notes that many of the strategies overlap with other agencies and their initiatives, maybe identifying the low-hanging fruit to implement. And Karen asks, for people watching on Facebook, what is the way that they will be commenting or sharing as well? A thought on that, Doug, or Julia or Amina?
Well, the Facebook chat is being monitored and moderated by staff. So I think let me reach out to them to see if they can summarize, or if they could drop it into the chat and we can highlight some of them.
Okay, great, thanks.
Paris Climate Agreement goals. This is good. Okay. What does City Council expect from our committees?
Matt notes in the chat that understanding how we can implement as many strategies as possible while keeping San Antonio an affordable place to live. And Karen says, looking forward to the update of the tree survey and to hearing impacts of this, as well as mitigation options if the pattern continues.
A directory of organizations working in this ecosystem. What are other countries doing? And in light of COVID, how are we going to pay for many of these programs? Ooh, good question. Yeah. Okay.
All right, Lupita, do we want to move on to question number 2?
Yes, we're pretty full. Mina, can you save this one and start a new whiteboard?
Yes, give me just 1 second.
Okay. So we'll save this so that we can refer to it and work on some of these answers.
And I'll just let everybody know, we've got a new tool all queued up for the next meeting. That'll be much easier. This is not ideal, but thank you for bearing with us.
I guess I will read to you the next question so you can begin to think about it so that you'll prep a bit before you get to brainstorm on the second whiteboard. So the next question is, what would make you feel that this was a successful process?
I'm sorry, what, can you clarify what this is, like this meeting or this committee?
The whole process. So like, let's say that you have already gone through or are going through this whole process. Like, what are some things that would come from the process that would make you feel that it was successful? What are some important elements that we need to be sure to experience or to have to feel that it was a successful process? I'm going to write the question up here. A balanced decision-making process that tangible results, identifiable metrics, goals for those metrics, and meeting the metrics. That we adapt reasonable, thoughtful, and meaningful change. Reached out our goals and measures, reducing heat-related fatalities, a list of affordable, tangible goals, implementing policies that actually move toward net zero goal, not just incremental.
In the chat window, Adelita says, meeting the benchmarks set out, as well as reduce vulnerability of populations to the consequences of climate change. And Jesus added, enacted policies that ensure vulnerable residents have access to the resources they need to obtain more resilient livelihoods in the face of climate change.
A balanced decision-making process. Seeing engagement of many individuals from diverse communities and backgrounds. I'm 69. I'd like to see the 2050 goal met by 2040 so that I'd feel good about my grandkids, I think, maybe, or my grandchildren's future. I'm seeing the strategies come to action, come to vision. Climate action portrayed as an ethical imperative. Action item tracker.
Other chat window feedback is raised level of understanding of climate change and anthropogenic contribution in the community as a whole. Identify where we can prototype strategies to test effectiveness and scalability, then implementing strategies throughout the city so we meet our targets. San Antonio policies enacted are a leader in the country, and options to mitigate challenges of climate change for our most vulnerable populations.
Focusing on solutions and not division. Oof. That's a good one. Living, breathing, I'm not sure if that's equity. Oh yeah, equity.
Yeah,
In place of verbal equity. Ah, living, breathing equity in place of verbal equity. Nice. I can't read. A balanced decision-making process that is actually attainable, not something we
Not something we will look back on in 10 years and not have successfully completed.
Mhm. Got it. Business community buy-in towards actively implementing SA climate goals on time. Meeting the goals of the plan and improving the lives of residents. Yeah. Carbon net zero by 2040. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That we adopt reasonable, thoughtful, and meaningful change. Yeah. Good. You kind of already answered the third question. Some of the third question. You're advanced students. I already see this. Okay. Are we good with this one?
Yeah. We have one more comment in the chat that we can read, and then we can move on to question number 3. That is ensuring we are working to directly engage populations who have been marginalized to understand what they think a solution is to the issues they are facing, and incorporating solutions that do not further cause pollution or harm in anyone's backyard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got that. Thank you. This was great. So the third question, some of you already kind of provided. So the third question.
Maybe we can change the scope of the third question, Lupita, to defining success for the end of this coming year. I think we did a good job defining what success looks like long-term for the project as a whole, if you think that that would be a different way to phrase it.
Well, I think it's still a valid question because it zooms into the object of this question. So, can I? Oh, I can. Can I? No, I can't. Okay, I'm just going to start over with a new text.
I have a quick question around the comments from the Facebook. Are those being tracked somewhere or saved?
Yes, they're. We'll pull all those together and then share them as part of the public record as well as with you all.
Great, thanks.
Can you see the question I posed?
Not quite yet. Now it's there.
Okay. So what does success look like for the community? And feel free to select and be specific if you'd like about which community. First, do no harm. Mm-hmm.
We avoid the costs of inaction.
Mm-hmm. Recognize the way things wasn't good enough for many, and do better. More understanding of the benefits of public transportation for all. Mm-hmm. Equitable access to needs brought on by climate change. community members realize the value of participation. Mhm.
That each community in San Antonio can say that they benefit from the CAP policies and strategies.
Nice. Greenhouse gas inventory meeting our CAP goals. More, yeah. And we have to check. Accessible, equitable, intentional changes available for all.
Policies, initiatives, and programs that give voice and opportunity to the marginalized and developing more resilient communities.
New policies benefits all San Antonio residents. Equitable outcomes for those most impacted and underserved prioritized first. Shared benefits of investments. Sustainable lifestyle change that improves the lives of community. Balance between equity and real change. Closing the Spruce power plant as soon as possible. Consider carefully the economic and social impact of our decisions.
That the business community and the environmental community see mutual benefit in the strategies of the CAP, and policies that ensure those with resources do not overuse the resources, like what is happening at Olmos Park with the private wells.
Another 300 years of San Antonio. Accountability and consistent focus on equitable climate action in all city processes. Increased ecological conscience. Bringing together the environmental and business communities to common understandings and agreements. I'm trying to read that one. It says success looks like moving away from the carbon.
Urban market-based system.
Okay, whew, thank you.
Okay. I think that's good.
Thank you so much. I saw so much wisdom here and equity mindsets, which of course I love. Thank you for sharing. So we'll go ahead and save this as well, Mina.
Give me just one more second. Okay, saved.
Okay, for our next steps, we wanted to go over with you as kind of a finishing slide, what to expect going forward in the coming 2 to 3 to 4 months. And we'll start off with Lupita and training.
Yeah, so January or February, we'll be having Dr. Andrew Dessler present on Climate Science 101. And in January as well will be a 4-hour training called Historical Truths Unveiled, an Introduction to Racism in the U.S. And so I will be leading this, I'm going to call it a learning session. I just ask you that once we do solidify a date for this, please come rested and present. We will be covering a lot of information. So I know it's going to be a lot of information, but I think it's going to be very impactful as well. So I'm really excited about that. So that'll kick off the equity trainings. After that one, we'll do examining power and its impact. That'll be for a couple of hours. And then coaching skills as race equity tools. And so these coaching skills are going to be skills that we'll be practicing together as we move along in our quarterly meetings.
And then on those quarterly meetings, right now, the expectation is that each one of our committee meetings will be taking place in the third month at the end of each calendar quarter. So March, June, September, and December. Doug, did you have a thought around polling for available dates and how you wanted to?
Yeah, and I think that's probably going to be the best bet. We'll probably figure out some sort of polling mechanism, and we'll do it earlier than later. And hopefully we can get these books way in advance so we avoid any conflicts. I mean, it could be as possible of picking the third Tuesday of of those months, but I think we'll send out follow-up correspondence to everybody to figure out what's the best way to go forward.
Yeah, and as you're thinking about your schedule, and I know March is a good, depending on when in March we're talking about it, it's 4 to 5 months away. There's certain things that you know, if you have kids and things like that, where you have spring break, or if you like to go away, we'll try to work around those times for sure. But if you know about certain things in June, September, December right now, obviously we're not going to try to lock in the time right now. Just be aware of those times, and just know that the expectation is there will be a 2-hour meeting at some point during those months to come for these committees.
And
I could also just, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just also wanted to stress that for the equity trainings, it's a foundational work. And so the goal for these equity trainings is that we get everyone on the same page with the same foundational knowledge so that we can graduate to having difficult conversations and having some more background information for our meetings. Yeah.
And just I was going to say, just for clarification, the equity training is for all committee members, regardless of committee assignment. So it's not just for the Climate Equity Committee. It's for both.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you for that clarification. And then and just very briefly on the Climate Science 101, Dr. Andrew Dessler is a internationally recognized expert on climate change. And you know, we felt it's very important that we all sort of have an understanding of climate dynamics, you know, at the global scale. And so we're very thankful that he'll be providing some sort of training for us all. And then in addition to additional meetings, I mean, I foresee the creation of subcommittees going forward, you know, as we start breaking down into different priorities. So in addition to these 4 sort of group committee meetings, there is the possibility that you may be asked or may be interested in serving on a subcommittee to get into some more detail that would sort of be in the off months.
Okay. We did have a question from Harjit, who asked about, noted that she's disappointed we wouldn't be doing our prioritization activity today. When will this be happening now? I
would think that when we reconvene at that first meeting. I mean, I think we could potentially definitely go through that exercise. I think there'll be a lot of knowledge gains between now and then that will really inform that conversation. So I think it's definitely something that we plan to do right out of the gate.
Okay. Any further questions from anyone before we adjourn?
Yes, this is Adelita. I put a question in the chat box. For the trainings, if you could send out evites as soon as possible, just so we can get them on our calendars. And then second, in the previous slide was the climate science from Dr. Tesler, I believe his name, the name was Tesler. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, if you go back, Mina. Yep,
So,
there's Dr. Andrew, yeah.
Dessler, I'm sorry, Dessler, correct? That's how you pronounce it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was just wanting to say, I'm not sure, in the his Climate Science 101 session, and it's a session, so I don't know if there's going to be more than one, but I would encourage that he does include health issues in there and health consequences of climate change. I think that would be very helpful. And I don't know, again, I don't know what it is in terms of the content, other than, of course, the basics, 101. But I think the health consequences are very important, because if we're talking about equity, we already know that San Antonio has numerous health disparities, and connecting those health disparities with climate, I think, is very important for this group and this city to understand.
It's a great comment, and we don't have an agenda planned yet, so I think we can definitely work that in, because I think you're right. It's not just about the science; it's those impacts.
I have a question about the process and the group. So is there another time where this group will meet as a joint group?
We plan to do that at least annually, but I think I think we'll need to discuss that. I think it's possible. I don't want to say no, but I think we need to sort of figure out the timing of it.
Okay. And then a second question is, we know things are moving very, very rapidly right now, particularly with COVID and climate change, like disasters. And so what is the opportunities to address some of these pieces? I know a lot of the climate ready and our work right now is like putting things for future work. I find it very difficult not to address some of the immediate issues. And so what opportunities, or might there be opportunities to, if something happens or if we have to move rapidly on a piece, would there be space to have a subgroup or bring that, and who do we bring it to be able to move some of these pieces a little bit forward if we need to, say, do an emergency or a statement on behalf of this group that might, help and impact and support people who are, who are trying to work to relieve some of the burdens of the things that we're talking about right now.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think you're absolutely right. There needs to be a nimbleness to respond. I think you will be, at the next committee meetings that we have, we'll be working with you all to identify and select chair and co-chairs who would be leaders and help coordinate some of that response. I think my office clearly would be in a position to help facilitate it. And I think, just because there's quarterly meetings doesn't mean that if we need to reconvene, I think we can. So I think there's always that option.
Ashley asks if there is any recommended reading materials between now and our first meeting. That recommended reading list apart from the plan itself.
Yeah, that's a great. What we'll be doing is we had a whole list, and we didn't want to overload you all at once. So there's other resources that we can begin sharing with you all that we think are good introductions into numerous topics that would be really helpful for you all to begin looking at.
This is Adrita, and along those same lines, is there a space where we as the panel can post things that we think might be interesting as well for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I'll work with Julia and Mina to figure out sort of the where and hows. We always have a challenge with the city, with our infrastructure, that it isn't necessarily the most accessible. So we'll have to work with our IT department, but I think that's a really great recommendation, that there should be a place where we can share back and forth.
Neil notes that Dr. Dessler has a very readable book on modern climate change that he uses in his course as good background, potentially before that session. It's called Introduction to Modern Climate Change.
So there was a question I just remembered about what the expectation is, or what we expect from you all, and I think something that Councilwoman Sandoval said at the beginning, a lot of consideration went into the selection process. I think you all are here because you really bring something to the conversation, expertise, perspective, and so I think one is to really bring that perspective. Really, I think, again, getting back to some of those norms, this is a tough subject. After working on climate, in San Antonio for a few years, it's going to require collaboration. It's going to require that listening. It's going to require problem solving. So I think, really working with us to really listen, to really hear, to try to come up with those workable solutions. I think the challenge, and I think Diana sort of hit the nail on the head, there's an urgency to this. It's not like we have an endless amount of time. So I think, coming to these meetings, willing to work, willing to have the tough conversations and work towards those outcomes. We're looking for input and advice. We're committed to bringing policies, programs, thoughts to you all. We want to hear your honest feedback across sectors. We want to hear what those on the business side, what do you think? We want to hear those on the environmental, the health side, so we can start crafting things that are going to have the highest likelihood of being implemented, because it is about action.
I can't see the chat. Do we have any other questions, either in the chat or if anyone wants to speak up?
I have a question. Do you all know, Mina, Julia and Doug, what to expect in the quarterly meetings, what they'll look like for both committees? I imagine that they won't look like this, or just sort of an overview of what to expect for us.
Yeah, and I think my personal thought is when we convene, I want to make sure that we're going into it with a clear objective. I think so I think one of the things I've been thinking about this lately is I see lots of communication going on between these meetings. It's not like, okay, hey, here's an agenda packet, you get it a week before and we walk in. I think there's going to have to be sort of, discussions and information sharing leading up to that meeting. So we all sort of walk in with, okay, here's the key questions that we want to ask. We want feedback on this, and so I see it as being very driven on what is the outcome we're trying to accomplish. So so I think we need to get together as a group and sort of flesh that out a little more, so we understand what the process is and we agree upon it. I didn't want to necessarily write the rules and hand them to everybody, but I do want to make sure that we're focused on, as we've been hearing, delivering outcomes. And I think that the big thing that we really need to make sure, and we're still trying to figure this out, is the cross collaboration. We don't want one group just going one way and the other group going another way. And so I think we continue to talk about we can have different people sort of sit on different committees, but maybe there needs to be more cross collaboration, as I think as Deanna mentioned. Maybe there needs to be another joint meeting. So I think we just need that. For me, that's the biggest thing. How do we make sure that this isn't just a siloed approach?
Thank you, Jack. And I wanted to underline the cross collaboration. I'm really excited about that idea too. And anything that can come from us or from me, I'm happy to help in whatever way I can.
Great.
I'd just add too, this is Julia. In a way, the committee members will be surrogates in the community for educated surrogates who will be understanding what climate is and being able to articulate it in a way that is relatable to a person that may not be, as interested or as studied on this topic, so that then we can march forward together to reach common goals. And I think it's clear on this, what I've heard tonight, just watching the whiteboard responses. I mean, everybody agrees about our eventual goal. It's just the path forward and the steps that we take to get there and the priorities that we are taking. And we've been doing a lot of research also that we'll be sharing with you that can kind of help us prioritize from a data standpoint where we could get the most bang for the buck, so to speak, in many ways. But also you will be bringing the voices of your networks to the table as well. And that's going to be a really important piece of this for our policymakers. They need the backing to pass policy that's going to get us towards our goals.
And Julia, thank you so much for mentioning that, because that's probably one of the most important things. You all are representing others, and so I think bringing those perspectives. But one of the things we really want to make sure is we need help getting the message out. We need help, increasing the awareness of what we're talking about around this table. So whether it's making sure that your business networks or environmental or neighborhood or health, making sure that you're helping amplify the call for awareness and input is really probably one of the most important things that we'll definitely be looking for.
I want to add that, as I've said before, there's a lot of wisdom in the room, but there's also wisdom in all the communities that you are a part of. And so, in government, sometimes decisions are made and there's oblivion to some very deep wisdom that the community has. And so this is a process to really engage and tap into that wisdom, because otherwise decisions won't make sense or they may not be applicable or feasible. And so this is a really critical moment to welcome and invite the community wisdom so that can be the guiding light, because we want it to stick, right? Otherwise, what's the point? So thank you so much for bringing that wisdom.
We have a last call for questions. Anyone else?
I have a last call for comment. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I want to thank everyone for giving us their 2 hours tonight on this. And there was a question there about what does council expect from the committee, and I think Doug alluded to it, but sorry, I'm trying to see everyone on my screen here. Doug alluded to it, and I'll tell you what would be helpful to us is that we get your insight, and as Lupita says, your wisdom on each of the strategies that we're going to be working on. When we adopted the plan, council members, or what I would tell the public is, look, because we adopt it doesn't mean we haven't figured out all the details about how any of these strategies are going to take effect. I think that's the work now, is making them, turning them into ordinances, turning them into programs or incentive programs, whatever it is. But we don't want to do that without your input. If we did that by ourselves, I'm not sure they would be very good. They would be very good programs. Well, they'd be good, but they're going to be a whole lot better with your input. And we hope that you will identify for us the pitfalls before we fall there, but also how to get out of those. So I'm sure we're all really good at identifying what might go wrong, but the reason you're also here, because there are plenty of people out there who have told us that lots of these things are going to go wrong, but the reason you're here is to tell us how to make them work. What is it we need to do? So that is really what I hope to hear from the group when they meet and when we bring recommendations forward to the council. So thank you very much for your time.
Okay. So I guess I'll wrap it up. And so thank you so much, everyone. Again, it's always difficult having these discussions virtually, and I'm really happy with the conversation that we had. There's lots of work to do between now and when we meet again. And I think you gave us a lot of good recommendations for those immediate next steps. So we will summarize all this material, all the different comments that we've heard. We'll get them back to you, and we'll start working on all those other things that came up during the meeting. But I'm wondering, Nick or Lupita, any other final things before we wrap up?
No, I appreciate everybody's input and engagement in tonight's session, and looking forward to working with everybody as we move forward on all the items and ideas that were brought forward.
Thank you so much, everyone. You asked, what are we expecting from you? And you're doing it. You already gave us a whole list of things that you're needing to be able to be more fully aware or knowledgeable. So you asked for background information and a whole list of things that we have to go back and review to be able to provide to you. So you're already doing it. So I'm really excited to have all of you present, and I'm excited. I'm excited to get this going. So thank you so much for your participation and for your presence today and your contributions.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, and please be safe.
Good night. Happy Thanksgiving.
And have a good holiday.
Adios.
Good night, everyone.
Adios. Bye.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Good night.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.